Hello, everyone. How are you today? How are you? Can you all see me and hear me? Quick tech check. Everyone, check it out. Yeah, I see the host and panelists. Awesome. Everyone can hear and see me. Anyone from the chat? How's everyone's day going today? Some members, thank you so much all for being here. Just putting a little chat there. Make sure you can all hear me. The attendees. Yes, hope so. All good. Okay, thumbs up. Great. So lunchtime. Hope everyone's having something tasty for lunch. Yeah, always exciting time, lunchtime. Thank you all for attending. Lovely to have everyone today on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon. Yeah, and so my name's Kareem. I'm with Expat Republic, and we are a media company, and we basically help expats to make life a little bit easier in the Netherlands, either by providing webinars, articles. We do professional networking, information about buying a house, which brings me to my next point of today. Today we'll be discussing buy to let properties, which basically means you have a property that you want to rent out. A little bit special to do in the Netherlands. There are some rules. It is very possible. Many people do it. Just really important to know about the rules. The beauty today is we have some, I say, 4 wonderful speakers, 5 including myself, but we have 4 wonderful guest speakers today from Mr. Mortgage and Expat Housing Network. We have Diovana from Expat Housing Network. We have Robin from Mr. Mortgage. We have Egle from Mr. Mortgage, and we have Lilet from Expat Housing Network. So lovely to have you today. These are great folks with some great knowledge. So we're really pleased and thankful that you're here today. So for all the attendants, please fire away all your questions towards the end or during the webinar, and we'll definitely get to them at the end. Yes, thank you so much for everyone being here, and I'll hand it over to our wonderful, very knowledgeable guest speakers. Thank you.
Kareem, thank you so much for your kind introduction, as always, and again, as always, a pleasure to be here and to talk with everybody joining here. Thanks for joining this webinar. Indeed, we're going to tell you everything about buy to let, what to consider, what to know about it, and we'll definitely enjoy your lunch while doing so. During the presentation that we'll do, we don't necessarily have time to answer the questions at that time, but just save them up or put them in the chat or in the Q&A, and then we'll just get to them at the end of the webinar. Maybe we'll already answer the questions during the presentation, but we'll definitely get to them at the end of the presentation, and we'll answer any of your questions. If some of these questions might be a bit more personal or more subject to your personal situation, you can always schedule a call with either Mr. Mortgage, the team of Mr. Mortgage, or the wonderful team of Expat Letting Network. So without further ado, let's dive into it. So obviously, we're going to discuss buy to let. So we're the 2 companies, Mr. Mortgage and Expat Letting Network, befriended, joining together there. And from Mr. Mortgage, we'll discuss and explain how Mr. Mortgage can help you to finance, buy to let, refinance, keep to let. Basically, investment mortgages, how that works and what you have to consider. Where our wonderful Expat Letting Network attendees here as well, we'll discuss how Expat Letting Network can help you in this process. So let's start with some introduction. The Mr. Mortgage team. I'm joined by this wonderful team. The second from the left, that's me, Robin Uijtdehaage, and I'm joined by a wonderful team of Setter, Egle, and Uskan, where Setter and Uskan are my joint mortgage specialists. And together we kind of the mortgage Google, if you will. If there's anything to know about mortgages, you want to know what your situation is and how it works out, we are here to help to give you an understanding of how everything works exactly. And one of our Egle is our growth marketeer and will also help us with the Q&A at the end of this presentation. Now, to give you a bit of insight in our service, what we do is our service contains first-time home buyers, assisting in when you first want to buy your home. You're moving to a new house, new country, a new house. So you want to know how everything works. It can be a bit of a maze in the Netherlands, mainly when it comes to administration. But if you know your way around, as like in a maze as well, you'll find your way to the end goal in no problem. The same thing applies, by the way, when you buy you buy your second home. So when you move from one home to your next home. So what do you want to do with your the house that you leave behind? Do you want to sell it, or maybe you want to keep it? When you see the interest rate currently, and if they drop down, you might want to refinance to benefit from the lower interest rates. All these things are possible, and that's what we would call refinancing. Or again, the same situation where you buy a new home, but you want to keep your current home and refinance that into an investment mortgage. A lot of possibilities there, something that will help you out as well. Obviously, also buy to let, so when you want to buy a house and then directly rent it out. And also the situation if a divorce occurs and how to deal with your mortgage. Then who will keep the house, will be sold. If you keep the property, is that manageable based on your finances? So pretty much all situations, whether you're self-employed or if you're employed by an employer, obviously different options there as well. So if you have any questions there, we can definitely help you out with that. That being said, that's our service. Now, again, we're not alone, of course. This is, by the way you can contact us. This QR code will be later in the presentation as well. So you can always find us through the QR code, or you can visit us at the Prinsengracht, one of the canals near Leidscheplein, or schedule a call on our website. Everything works. And again, as mentioned, we're not here alone, but we're here joined by the wonderful team of Expat Letting Network, Lilet and Diovana. And this is the time that I'll give them the floor. So by all means, give a short introduction. Go ahead.
Hi. Oh, sorry. Go for it. Hi, everyone. I'm Diovana, and I want to just say thank you for being here. Thank you, Mr. Mortgage. Thank you, Karim. Thank you for the opportunity as well. I'm Diovana. I'm here at the Eindhoven area. I'm a buying and letting consultant as well. I am from Brazil, been in the Netherlands for about 14 years. And yeah, we are eager to help you out to rent out your property. I will introduce my dear colleague, Lilet. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, I'm Lilet. I'm Australian Filipino, so excuse the accent. I've lived in the Netherlands now for 8 years. I've worked, I think you might hear Expat Letting Network, and you will also hear Expat Housing Network, which is our sister company. So I used to work for Expat Housing, looking after internationals who are looking for a home in the Netherlands. So I've got a really good, both Diovana and I have really good insight from the other side of the market. So we really know what tenants are looking for. So now we both work also for landlords. So we help support landlords to find tenants for their property. So our service, we provide two services. We do tenancy placement and property management, or you can have a combination of the two. For us, we work a little bit differently to your typical real estate agents. For us, it's about having a good experience for a landlord, especially for expats. As mentioned earlier, it could be daunting, so we want to make life easier for you and hassle-free. We believe that everybody deserves to feel at home. And so for us, finding a great tenant starts with caring about your property and the process. And with this combined, we hope that the potential tenant feels instantly at home. And when they do, we'll hopefully, they will treat your home with the same level of care and hopefully find the ideal tenant for you. We are in Amsterdam, Groningen, The Hague, and Eindhoven. I look after the Amsterdam area, and Diovana in Eindhoven.
Very good. Thank you for the introduction, Lilet and Diovana. Always a pleasure to having you. And let's move forward. So to begin with, Let's start with the basics. This is, I think this is almost the most important thing. Buy-to-let mortgage is not the same as a residential mortgage. Why we say that is because a residential mortgage has different requirements, different conditions when it comes to the bank, and different considerations. This is exactly what we're walking you through, so you know exactly what the differences are, and mainly what to look out for when buy-to-let. So that's also the focus that we'll have this call, obviously. So what is buy-to-let? A buy-to-let mortgage is like I said, so here is a type of mortgage that's specifically designed for the finance property to rent out to tenants. What this means is if you buy a buy-to-let property, if you buy a property and you rent it out and you take on a financing, so an investment mortgage, it's not intended to live in it yourself, but specifically to rent it out and to have it partially paid and hopefully majority paid by the rental income. That's the basics, the bare basics. Nope, right, there we are. So basically, where to start? 3 questions are the most important, and that is the why, what, and how. So first, why? Why would you invest in real estate? These are 3 questions to ask yourself. So why are you considering doing this? Is it to generate income? Is it for a future perspective? So for instance, for pension income, for instance, or anything else, or to create additional wealth. Karim, maybe you can start up the poll if possible. Yeah, there we are. So here you can fill out what your goals are for your buy-to-let. Again, as mentioned, the passive income, build wealth, or diversifying your investment portfolio if you're already investing in your investing with the savings and assets that you have available. I'll give you some time to fill it out. And then just a quick check with Karim. Do you also have the second question, maybe?
I do, but I can't launch it until everyone's done the first one.
All right.
So, let's give them 30 seconds and then I'll definitely launch the other one.
No worries. All good. All good. Just to let you know, for anybody that's already filled out the first question, second question will be more about where you're looking to buy, because that's also the second question, the what. So what are you looking to invest in? So what property are you looking to invest in? What area are you interested in? Do you want, for instance, an area that you're close to yourself, or do you look for an area that is maybe outside of your direct range and want to have it taken care of and maintained by a third party? All of these things are definitely possible, and options that we'll discuss later on. So then you can state where you would like to buy a property for. It's just to kind of get an idea of how everybody's what everybody's looking into. Thank you for filling out the first question. Majority goes for passive income, so that's mainly the rental income, and get a sustainable monthly additional income, and makes perfect sense. And then here's the where. So the Amsterdam area, Eindhoven area, Rotterdam area, Den Haag, Nijmegen, or somewhere else, because the Netherlands might not be the biggest country, but there's a lot of different places to live. It's well packed, if you want. So different areas definitely possible, just to get a kind of an idea where you can fill out where you're looking to invest in real estate. Give you some time to fill it out, and then we can move forward. Then in a minute we'll move forward to the how, and that's mainly what this webinar is about, of course, how we're going to finance. Thank you for filling it out, everybody. And it's between Amsterdam and somewhere else, and with the close seconds with the other areas. Makes a lot of sense. Let's focus on the how. So that's, in the end, one of the most important things. Of course, how are you going to finance the investment that you're looking out for? Obviously, you have the investment mortgage, buy-to-let, keep-to-let, and of course, there's a certain input of your personal savings required as well. So that's also good to keep in mind. So when you can start considering this, why do I want to do this? What do I want to invest in? And how do I want to finance it? And how much of my personal savings or assets am I planning to input in this endeavor? Now, moving forward, the financial requirements. So there are some variables taken into account in a mortgage application or an investment mortgage. First off, the purchase price of the property, obviously, because that's what the total amount that has to be available when the transfer is there. Now, there's always a down payment, and this is closely related to the loan-to-value ratio, which is the third stated there as well. So when you, again, a buy-to-let mortgage or investment mortgage is different from a residential mortgage. And one of the differences is with a residential mortgage, you can finance up to 100% of the property value. This is also considered 100% loan-to-value. So the value of the property you can finance fully in a mortgage if you can afford it based on your income, of course. Now, with an investment mortgage, it's a bit different. So first off, the value of the property will be considered the value in rented state. So when there's a tenant in the property, then the value in that state. That is slightly different from the residential value. The reason why is because somebody else lives in the property. So for one, they take different care of the property, of course, than a homeowner would do. Secondly, if there's somebody living in the property, it's the niche market for people that will buy this property from you is also a bit smaller because that is solely selected on investors, of course. This is the value that the bank will consider in the mortgage application. So that is usually a bit lower. Very, very basic calculation, which the mortgage will not be based on, but you can consider about 85% of the property value, the regular property value, 85% of that is approximately, then you can consider the value in rented estate. From that value in rented estate, the maximum mortgage that you can take out with any investor is 90% of that. This means that the total input of your personal savings when you buy a buy-to-let property is usually around the 30, maybe 40% of the purchase price. So that's the down payment considered. Now, this is very, very basic. In the end, it's a more detailed calculation based on the specifics, of course. Then the rental income is very important because in the end, it's called an investment mortgage. And that kind of means as well that you want to have profits. And then, like the majority of you filled out in the poll, you want to have ongoing passive income, meaning that the rental payments should be higher than the mortgage payments, and that would be the profit, of course. And then, of course, and lastly, but definitely not least, is your personal financial situation. It has to fit the option of investing in real estate, of course. Now, moving on. Again, well, we can't say it enough. Investment mortgage is not the same as a residential mortgage. And these are the main differences. I already mentioned it shortly. Residential mortgage allows you to get 100% LTV, loan to value, where investment mortgage is 70 to 90% of the property value in rented estate. Now, one other important thing is the transfer tax, and this is a hot topic as well. Usually, before, the transfer tax was 2% for everybody. Then, as of last year, this was increased to 8% when you bought a property for investment purposes. Mainly if you buy a property for any other means than your residential home yourself. This year, as of the 1st of January, this transfer tax for investment properties has increased to 10.4%. So this is definitely something to be considered within your budgeting, the investment that you want to do. And this is obviously something that we'll walk you through as well. And then when it comes to the interest rates for the residential mortgage, those are the regular interest rates in the market right now. When you compare that to the interest rates for investment mortgages, they're usually about a percentage, maybe a percentage and a half higher than the regular interest rates for the residential mortgages. Again, these are all things that will be considered in the calculations that we do as well. Then the property requirements. So it's not only a financial requirement, the property also has some requirements, of course. And this is something that I'll leave it to the lovely ladies of the Expat Letting Network.
Okay, so before considering obviously buy to let, be mindful that there's certain regulations and requirements that determines whether you can rent out your property, how much you can charge, and who qualifies. Now the points are awarded, and it's determined by the municipality, and the points are determined by the size of the property, the WOZ value, which is given by municipality, the energy efficiency, and the luxury are additional points such as having a mixed tap or bath or certain furnishing in your kitchen. These add values to the points. Now, any properties that fall under the 149 points, over 149 points, falls into the private sector, and prices are this is considered unregulated, so there's no price restrictions. Any properties that falls under the 149 points, this becomes then it's regulated, so there are price restrictions. So do check with your municipality. Each one is different. For the housing permit, sorry, next page. So for the housing permits, certain cities in certain areas, the tenant will require a housing permit. This is obviously issued by the municipality. The intention is to regulate the distribution of rental housing in areas where the distribution exceeds the demand, the demand exceeds the supply, and to protect properties for the lower income. For example, in Eindhoven, it's only for properties that are owned by a corporation that the tenant requires a housing permit. In The Hague, it's for properties that are 185 points over less, or if the rental property is 1,015 and 31, or regardless of points, the tenant will require a housing permit. Now, to qualify in The Hague, for example, for a permit, there is an income cap. So let's say for a single person, it's 61,000. For two people, it's 77,000. But do check, each municipality is different, so you can check online, or you can schedule a call with us and we will help you with that. And in Amsterdam, it's only for properties that are regulated with a rental price of 808 and 6, or in the case of ground lease or private agreements that dictate a maximum rent of 1,068.83, the tenant will require a permit. Now, we do advise our landlords to, even though it's a tenant's responsibility, we do advise our tenants to let their tenants know that they will require a housing permit for the property. Also, in some cases, this time a landlord will need a permit. This is if you do decide to rent out your property to more than 2 people from different households. Now, there's certain requirements that you need to qualify, and that is like fire safety, a communal space over 11 meters square, sound insulation, and each tenant requires an individual contracts for this as well. But also be mindful that in certain neighborhoods and buildings, there is limits to a number of permits, housing permits, sharing permits that are available. There is a link online that you can check, which we can share with you if the property, if the neighborhood has enough permits for you to apply for. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Diovana to explain the different types of contracts available.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So there are 3 types of rental contracts that are used in the Netherlands when you put your property out there for a tenant. So some of them are more common, for example, model A and B, and model B is actually a very common one, especially in the Amsterdam area. For example, here in Eindhoven area, the model A is still something that they use it quite a lot, and then model B is starting to be something that we see a little bit more in the market. So let's go through them. Of course, if you have any questions, you can always put it in the Q&A, in the chat, or contact us afterwards, and then we can also base it on your property, the requirements of the property, price and everything in the area. We can also advise you on which contract will be better for your own situation. So the model A is indefinite rental period, which means that the tenant will rent the house for at least 12 months. So he can't leave before that. And after that, the contract becomes indefinite, which means that they have 1 month notice. They can stay in the property as long as they want. That's no ending date in this contract, but there is a minimum period of 12 months. So they have to be there at least for a year. And then after that, they can stay as long as they want. And then they have 1 month notice to let you know when they are leaving the property. And Model B, sorry, is a temporary rental contract, which means that the tenant can only stay in the property for a maximum of 24 months. But in this contract, the tenant can leave every month with 1 month calendar notice. So they can leave anytime they want, with of course giving the notice that's required. Sometimes we are able to put the notice at 2 months. Actually, right now it's a maximum of 2 months actually. But you have the opportunity to have a tenant for a maximum period of 24 months. In case both of parties would like to extend this contract, the Model B will become, after the 24 months, a Model A. So it will become an indefinite contract. So the tenant can stay as long as they want, and they also going to have the 1 month notice to tell you when they are leaving the property. The Model C, it's a contract that we don't see that often. If you already own a property in the Netherlands, and let's say you got a proposal to work in another country, or you want to take a sabbatic or something like that, you are leaving the country, so you could use and you have a date to come back, you can use a temporary rental period, which means that the tenant knows that they have to live in a certain period, because you are coming back to the country and you need to live in your property again. Let's say you're going to, I don't know, any other country to work for 6 months, or a sabbatic for 6 months. So you can rent out the property for 6 months, and then the tenant knows that they will have to leave the property within 6 months. Same thing, notice period goes for every contract. And in the Model C, maybe you are there in your sabbatic or your working experience abroad, and you decide to stay for a little bit longer. You can also extend that contract a little bit more for the dates that you are coming back. But this contract is exclusive for people that are leaving the country to work in or to do something else, and they will be out for a while and then they will be back. So those are the 3 contracts, and most used ones in the Netherlands. And of course, as I said it before, we can also always advise you which one will be better for your situation, the property situation, for the whole process of renting out your property.
Clear. Thank you, Diovana, and Lilet.
You're welcome.
As well. And again, if any questions come up, we'll have a Q&A after this, after the presentation. Now, when buying property, especially in the areas that we have a poll for, so when it's in Amsterdam, Den Haag, and there's a lot of other cities as well, there is a property purchase protection law. Mainly, this means that in certain cities in the Netherlands, and obviously those are the most popular cities to invest in as well, there is a restriction in place. The reason why they put this in is because it turned out that first-time home buyers had a harder time buying properties in these areas, and there are some restrictions there now. The values that you can see here are the WOZ value, the WOZ value. This is the value that the municipality gives a property. Now, they won't visit the property itself and see how nice the kitchen is, but it's more along the lines of the average selling price in the year, per square meter in the year before last. There's a registry of the WZ values that you can look up for every property. So you can always check what that situation is. Usually the WZ value is a bit lower than the actual value. It is a hot topic right now because they have quite significantly increased last year. So they're closer to the actual value than they were before, but there's usually a bit of a gap. Now, here are the 4 examples, in Groningen, Amsterdam, Utrecht, and Haarlem. Let's use Amsterdam as an example. If you buy a property and you want to invest in it, so rent it out, then the WZ value cannot be lower than 533,000 euros this year. If you do buy a property and you want to rent it out, you can't. The municipality doesn't allow you to do so, and otherwise you have to live in it for 4 years or more. Now, that doesn't mean that it's absolutely impossible to buy investment properties. Definitely not. It gets more and more that people start looking to the outer skirts of these cities, and there are also sufficient cities in other areas that you can still buy property to rent it out for. But this is something to be mindful of. These numbers of that you can see right here are really determined every start of the new year. So this is valid for the remaining time of 2023, and then end of the year we'll get the new numbers for the new time. The days that this will be determined is the moment that the transfer is done. So when you are the owner of the property, then you have to conform to these rulings that you cannot buy for a WZ value less than it's stated right here. Again, if you need to know something there, or you want to check what those WZ values are and want to know more information, let us know. We can help you out. So taxes, the most fun topic right here. The taxes to pay are the property tax. That's the regular tax that you would pay as a homeowner and a residential homeowner as well. The property transfer tax, as mentioned before, if you buy it as an investment property, is 10.4%. To give you a bit more detail there, transfer tax is kind of in the word already, of course, but just to elaborate a bit on it, it's about the transfer of ownership. So when the ownership is first somebody else's and then it transfers to you, then there's a transfer tax due. Then it depends on what kind of owner of the property you'll be. If you'll be the residential homeowner, then it's 2% that you pay. If you're an investor, then it's 10.4%. Now, I often get the question, so can I just buy it as a residential owner and then switch it into an investment? That is something that you have to live in the property for a longer time. So that's not necessarily a way to get out of the property transfer tax, just so you know. But it is something to consider. If you buy it for an investment purpose, then it's 10.4. If you already own a property and you want to refinance it into an investment mortgage, so you're moving to a new house and you want to refinance your current home to an investment mortgage, then there's no transfer tax on the current house that you own. Now, income tax, that is basically only your income. When it comes to the rental payments that you do, you don't, if you rent out your entire home, you don't pay income tax over the rental income. And that is very nice and very good to know. If you rent out a room, which you can also do, then you wouldn't have to change your mortgage. You can keep it as a residential mortgage, and you only rent out a room. At some point, you do have to pay income tax over the rental income that you have over one separate room in the house that you're renting out. Capital tax, that is something that will be considered when you have a residential home. The home will not be considered as a capital that you have to pay taxes over. When you have it as an asset, so as a part of your investment portfolio, then it will be considered as an asset and part of the capital that you own. So you do have to pay taxes over it. Or mortgage will be considered in that as well. And this really depends on what the specific situation is, of course, how high your mortgage is, what the value of your property is, and so on. So this will be included in the calculations that we do when there's a specific case. So those are the taxes to consider. And then keep to let versus buy to let. Now, I already shortly mentioned it a couple of times here and there, but the differences are like this. So buy to let refers to the practice of purchasing a property to rent it out as an investment. So you don't own it yet, you just find a property, you bid on it, and directly you rent it out. And keep to let, that's a situation where you already own the property. For instance, you live in it right now, and then you move to a new house, and then you want to refinance it to keep to let. So you keep the property to rent it out. That's basically the difference right there. In the end, with both mortgages, it will be an investment mortgage. So it's more the process to get to the investment mortgage. That's the difference. Or you buy it right away, or you change your current residential property. So we've discussed quite a lot, and there's always a couple of frequently asked questions, FAQs. So this is an example right here. I'm planning to move away from the Netherlands. What should I do with my mortgage and property? So basically, when you move out of the property or move away from the Netherlands, no bank with a residential mortgage will allow you to keep the residential mortgage. Even if you just continue paying, they won't allow you to keep a residential mortgage because they need you to stay in the Netherlands and live in the property to be able to keep that property. So what you would have to do, two options: either you sell The very obvious one, of course, you don't pay any taxes over the profit that you make, which is very nice. You don't pay any penalty when you sell the property, so you don't pay any penalty to the mortgage bank, nothing like that. But you would have to refinance into an investment mortgage. It kind of depends per lender how they deal with that. Some do allow you to move abroad, some have issues with that. We work with pretty much all banks that have investment mortgages as well, so we can determine what the best course of action is right there. So there are definitely options, and just be assured that you first know what you're doing and what the options are before you take the next step. Now, what Mr. Mortgage does in this whole process is we supply you an overview of your financial options. We do a financial analysis. It makes sense to rent a property or to sell in the case of moving to a new property. So first, the financial analysis to get a clear idea of what are your plans, what are your options, and what is then the best course of action. Then, when you want to move forward, we'll arrange the mortgage, the value appraisal. So we'll send over an appraisal to determine the value. In that appraisal, there will also be stated expected rental income. So you have a clear idea what happens if I sell the house or rent it, or if it's a buy-to-let, what is the value in the rented state and what's the expected rental income. And then obviously, thirdly, we'll apply for the keep-let or buy-to-let mortgage. Now again, Expat Letting Network obviously also has a couple of things to say about that. So Diovana, go ahead.
Yes, indeed. So what can we help with? Can you help with? Is it's of course taking care of the property, make sure that everything is going to the property, have an intake, make sure that everything is correct for renting out the property, analyze the values and everything, contract, have all that's the back part, I would say, with the landlord, with you as a client, and make sure that everything is correct for us to find the correct tenant for the house. So go to the property listing, views and screaming, make sure that we're going to be the ones that have the correct tenants to come to your property. Find the tenant, as I said it before, go to all the documents, passport, working contract, to make sure that everything is legit as well, and they are able to pay the rent, of course. Make sure that not only you as our client, as the landlord, understand the contract, but the tenant also understands very well the contract, because that we see as working as a rental agent myself and helping people rent out their properties. We see that there's a lot of misunderstanding in contract, so we want to make sure that everyone in the process knows what they're signing for, and then that avoids a lot of future troubles, especially when the time for a checking out comes. Make sure that the handover is correctly done, that the tenant knows how to use the property, knows how everything works in the property, and know how to maintain the property as well, correct? And if it's a choice of the landlord, of our client, to do also property management and be the one that will connect with the tenant when it's necessary, be your channel through for the tenant. Yeah, that was it for now.
Yeah, thank you. In the end, basically, what we do together, if you put everything together, it's basically to de-stress you. I mean, it's a thing to do this, but it's a lot of things to consider, and yeah, it's basically full service, so you don't worry about everything, and you can just focus on the nice thing that you own a property, you have some profit there, and
yes,
that's the most important thing in the end, of course.
That's a good thing to focus only on the profit, right? And not have to worry about anything else. That's perfect.
And have the tenants, that's very, very good. And I like that as well, because you want to know that everybody in the whole process know what it's all about, and that will relieve a lot of stress in the future as well.
Yes, indeed.
All right. Return on investment, and that's basically what it's all about, of course. So what is your ROI? Now, here are some examples. So with two options here, with a purchase price of 315, with an expected rental income of 1,386, to be very exact. The required funds to input from your own assets are approximately 100,000 euros, and that covers everything then. So that doesn't cover also the transfer tax, It covers the down payment that you have to do, the fees with everybody that you work with, and then your net return is approximately 4.27%. So that's after all the facts. Now the cash on cash return is 2.76. Now these are different numbers that really depend on your specific situation, and this is something that will see what makes the most sense for you and how it can fit in the requirements that you have in the remaining portfolio which you might have. When the purchase price is different, so for instance 600,000 euros, and the expected rental income is different as well, you can see that the numbers obviously change as well. Now obviously the higher you go with the purchase price, the higher the investment, the startup investment would be as well. These are just two examples that you'll see that we'll set up for you when we get there as well. Now, just so you know, this whole presentation, a lot of information, of course, you can always look it up later on as well, because the presentation and everything will be sent to you as a recording. Now, pricing. From Mr. Mortgage, we have a pricing of buy-to-let, as stated right there, pretty much the same as buying a new house, really for your own use. And when you keep to let, that's a refinancing, so you already have that. So we have a slightly reduced amount. We always start with the financial analysis. That's where we charge a small down payment for 299 euros, which will be part of these fees, of course. But that basically means that you already know, okay, this is what my financial situation is, and this is the range that I can work with. Now, you can see mortgage advisory, calculation, and mortgage application, but it doesn't only focus on the one transaction, but it's basically from the moment that you do the financial analysis, and then throughout the whole process, until you have the house that you want to invest in, that's where we guide you through. So every time that you find a property, you say, well, hey, this is the new property. You've discussed that with the lovely people from Expat Letting Network, and we kind of have an idea of what maybe the rental income expected would be in the area. Then we can adjust the calculations every time for each and every property that you're interested in, until you buy the property. It will take care of the whole mortgage application, communication with the bank. You don't have to go to a bank at all. Everything will be taken care of for you. Now, that's our pricing, and this is where Expat Letting Network comes in. Diovana.
Thank you. So yeah, as I was saying before, we work with the tenant placement, where we come to the property, to your property, and do an intake to see if everything, what is necessary to rent out the property. If you have everything, of course, discuss about having a property furnished or unfurnished, guide you through that. If you need a property if you decided to have a property that is furnished, of course, help you with that as well. Take photos of the house, listen to the house in our channels, and also we have a very large network. We work with a lot of relocation companies, so then we have much more possibilities on finding the correct tenant for the property. Do the whole promotion on the correct websites and everything else. Plan all the viewings via the property with the tenants. Request all the documents, do the screening to see if everything is correct for them to be able to rent out the property. Set up the contract. Again, I would really like to phrase this that it's very important that tenant and landlord understand correct what they are signing for. And in our side, we see a lot of trouble with that. So we are very keen want to have everyone being very aware of everything that is written in the contract. Do the inspection report before the tenant gets the keys, so we know that everything that is there, how it was, taking the pictures, make sure that the tenant understand that everything has to be at the same state as it was when they did the check-in, when they got the keys, and then after everything is done, the inspection is done, the check-in is done with the tenant, we do offer 2 more weeks of support, not just for the landlord, but also for the tenants to go through all the questions that they have. They do have, if they have to set up their own utilities, for example, gas, electricity, and water. It can be, I know it seems very easy now that we're all living here for a while, but it can be a little bit difficult when you just come to this country. So it's nice to have someone that they can contact and go through all the correct channels, so you as a landlord doesn't have any problem in the future when the checkout comes as well. And for that, we do charge 1 month rent. And then we also offer property management. If you don't want to have any contact with the tenant, let's say in the future, that someone want to solve any problems, or just don't want to be the person that they call if something happens, good or bad, then we will be there, good or bad, again, for them, and solve everything that is necessary if something broke. So of course, we will be always your point of contact and the tenant's contact, and you don't have to worry about anything. Please book an intake with us if you need more specifications on the laws of renting a property, on the municipality law, and what is necessary, and especially with the price, and especially the contract that needs that suits your property and your current situation. We'll be happy to inform you about everything, and then we can decide together what will be the best option to rent out the property.
Makes a lot of sense. As always, thanks.
Thank you.
And then we can move forward to the Q&A. Again, a lot of information. I can expect that there might be some questions there as well. And this is where this is the entrance of my lovely colleague Egle that will take care of the Q&A. And maybe you can take it from here, Egle. By the way,
yeah, thank you.
Oh, there you are. One more thing. If you want to schedule any appointments, you can use these two QR codes. I'll leave them off the screen so you can use them whenever you want. Or you can always just go to the website, of course, as well. Whatever works best for you. Egle, the floor is yours.
Hi, hello, thank you. So as Robin mentioned, we're gonna answer general questions, and for more specific situations, you can schedule a call. So I'm going to start from the beginning. And could you, Robin, elaborate more about how rental property and rental income is taxed?
Sure. Yeah, and that's a quick and easy answer, really. So if you rent out your entire home, your rental income is not taxed. As easy as that. When you rent out, when you have a residential mortgage and you rent out one room, then if you go over a certain amount, then it can be taxed as income. But again, if you buy a house or if you have an investment mortgage and you rent out in your entire house, it's not taxed at this time. There are not any plans to change that anytime soon. If there are any plans or considerations by the government that will be more specific and concrete, then we'll let you know, of course.
Another question is, it's for Expat Letting team. You mentioned 149 points in the free sector that will be changed, bringing it to 180 points. However, there is a clarity on how new points, how the new system work. Could you elaborate more? Like, do you know a little bit how the system gonna be? What points gonna increase my threshold?
So at the moment, it's still a proposal. So it's possibly going to happen as of next year. And it just means that obviously because of the housing shortage, so they want to raise the bar to 185 points, I think. And so, which will be the same as The Hague. I think what they're trying to put is a price income cap on certain properties. So if your property that you're looking to buy falls under that 180 points or 185 points, then you can only, then it will fall under the regulated, and there will be a salary income cap, or possibly obviously a maximum rent that you can charge for the property. The things that you can do, obviously, and also the thing to be mindful of, at the moment, the WOZ value of the property goes toward, like 100% of it goes towards the value. I think they're also proposing that it'll be a little bit less for next year. Again, it's just obviously to have more access for the mid-income and for low income to have access to the property market as well. The things that you can do, obviously, the property that when you're buying the buy-to-let properties is obviously be mindful that what type of energy label it has, the size of the property, again, as Robin mentioned, where it is, and obviously certain fixtures, if it's a renovated property, or or there's certain things that you can add additions to the property before renting it out. We can also check that out for you, how much before you rent a property that you're looking at. We can look into it for you, how many points it has, whether it has a valid energy label as well. Normally when you do buy to let, it has to have a valid energy label, but we can certainly check that out for you with you as well. And also there are like links that you can check how many points the property has, which we can share. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. And the next question is, can you buy a property in the Netherlands and rent it out from abroad?
I'll take that one. So you can always buy property in the Netherlands. That's not necessarily an issue. You can buy it from anywhere. So whether that's in the Netherlands or abroad, that's no problem. The main difference is if you can close a mortgage, if you can get a financing, an investment financing on a property. And that's where banks have a restriction. So when you live abroad, if you have a Dutch passport, there are possibilities to buy it. Then renting out is the next step. But buying is no problem. Financing is another issue. If you don't have a Dutch passport and you live abroad, that's not necessarily possible. If you already own a property, you live in the Netherlands, and then you move abroad, then there can be options. So it really depends on what the specific situation is. From abroad, you live there, be registered, and your income is there, and then you want to invest in the Netherlands only from your own savings or another bank from the country that you're in. When you're living the property, live in the Netherlands, and then you move abroad, then you can refinance the property that you have under certain conditions and depending on the bank.
Oh, sorry, Robin. I just want to add just to the previous question quickly. We do advise a lot of our clients to actually, it's a good idea to rent out your property this year before those changes apply, just because obviously if you start the contract this year, it only applies for new contracts if the proposal is approved as of next year. So it's all, you know.
That's a very good addition. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Thanks.
The next question is, and I saw there are a few of them in the chat, that if you want to change your residential mortgage to buy-to-let mortgage, do you need to pay transfer fee?
Yeah,
Can you elaborate a little bit?
I do understand the question. So if you change it from a residential to a keep-to-let or investment mortgage, no, because you already own the property. The transfer tax is about the transfer of ownership, not transfer of mortgage, but transfer of ownership. Because basically what taxes do in this case is they tax the transfer of financial funds and from one owner to the next. As you remain the owner of the property, there's no change of ownership. So therefore, no change of finances over the ownership of this property. So in short, refinancing to an investment mortgage, no transfer tax.
Thank you. This question will go for Expat Letting team. Do you need to live in a property for a certain amount of years if you want to rent it out later? Does it have any regulation? So for example, apartment, and then you need to stay 1 year or two before renting.
Yeah, I can answer that question. It depends where you buy the property. For example, in Eindhoven, if you buy a property up to 355,000 euros as a WOZ value, you can rent it out only without a permit, only after 5 years that you have lived yourself in the property. Before those 5 years, you do need to ask for a permit in the city hall. It can take them up 1.5 years, if I'm not mistaken, to answer. Of course, it can be in 1 month, but it can take up them 1.5 year, 1.5 year. Yes, indeed, 1.5 for them to give you an answer, because it's yeah. That's the time that they have stipulated on the website of the city hall. They seem to be very busy. But if you do want to rent it out without requiring a permit, it has to be after 5 years living in the property yourself, being registered in the property yourself. Otherwise, you do need to request a permit. If I'm not mistaken, Amsterdam is about 4 years, Utrecht as well. And Den Haag, I don't know correctly, but I believe it's 4 or 5 years as well. Rotterdam is 4 years. So if you wanted to do it before, you do need to request a permit. And if your WOZ value is above in Eindhoven, for example, 355, then there is no requirement for a permit, of course.
Yeah, and that's basically in any other location where they don't have this Purchase Protection Act, right?
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Right. Thanks. Makes sense.
And the next question is, when you sell buy-to-let or residential property, how about capital tax? Do you need to pay that?
A capital gains tax?
Yeah,
No.
gain, sorry. Yeah.
No worries. So no, you don't pay taxes over the profit that you make on your property, which is one of the nice things you wouldn't have to do. So that's easy answer. To be perfectly fair, you already pay property tax, which is based on the WZ value, so you pay that every year. So that's kind of encompassed there. You already pay tax also on property profile if you have your residential property, and that's kind of you pay tax over the pleasure of owning your own home, which is a bit of a weird tax, but that kind of covers the capital gains tax. So you don't have to pay any taxes over the profit that you make when you sell.
Thank you. Another question is, if you already have an existing residential mortgage and you want to build a new house, purchase land plus building, how does that work with the mortgage?
So then considering that it's also buy-to-let, so that might be something that you want to do. So you're buying land, build a new house on there, you're going to live in there, and then you want to refinance your current property. I'm going on a limb and expect that that's the situation that occurs. Basically, you would still live in your current house until the new house is ready, right? So then that means that during that time you have double costs that will all be considered. Something we can help you with new build as well, by the way, for your new house and how you want to finance that. And then when your new house is ready, then that's the moment where we can also look into refinancing your current property. So that would be a couple of different steps to take. So first, financing, getting the new build mortgage done. Then when we're close to the end date of the construction and you get the keys and everything is done, then you can move out of your current house, meaning that you can refinance it to an investment mortgage, and that's that. One small, well, quite important detail really, is as long as you can have two mortgages at once, both have a tax benefit over, as long as it's a residential mortgage, of course. When you live in the current house that you have a mortgage on and you have a house being built for you, then you temporarily have two mortgages, and that's perfectly fine with the tax authorities. And then when everything's done, again, you can refinance your current home to an investment mortgage. If that's the question. If it's adjusted and the question was expected to be different, let me know in the Q&A.
For Expat Letting team, do you provide rent insurance in case a rent is not paid by the tenant?
Well, not so much the rent insurance, but we do what we normally do. Well, the requirement is a 2-month rent deposit when they sign a contract. So the tenant at the beginning of their rental contract is they pay 1 month rent and then they pay 2-month deposit. This normally is kind of the insurance to, obviously, if there is delayed in the rental payment.
Thank you. And one more question, just I think because it was short. So when do you manage a property, Expat Letting team? Do you provide also maintenance and repairs? Do you offer the service?
Yeah, so that is part of the service. What we do is we are, as Diovana mentioned, we are the point of contact. We are the ones to speak to third parties to query about quotes for maintenance in the property. And once we get that quote, we notify the landlord, obviously for approval before we proceed with the repairs or maintenance in the property. And it also depends, like if it's something that is not, if it's a tenant's fault, then obviously it falls under the tenant's responsibilities. But if it's something in the property that has been damaged, like, I don't know, a block tap from the property, then it is the landlord's responsibility, and we will investigate and look into that. And then, as mentioned, we will get quotes and get an approval from the landlord before proceeding.
The question to Robin, regarding the funds for buy-to-let, can you use equity from your existing property to cover the difference?
Yeah, very good question. Yes, you can. If anything, if there's equity in your home, so let's say very, very basic calculation, you have a mortgage for 300,000 euros on your existing home, and the value is 500,000 euros, and your income allows it. It could even be more interesting to first use that equity. The reason why is, and obviously this is a comparison that we'll make and see what your financial situation is like and how to optimize that. This is definitely an option. Reason being that the interest rates on your residential property, so residential mortgage interest rates, are lower than investment mortgage interest rates. So it could make sense that we use as much as your equity from your residential mortgage as possible, so you wouldn't have to get as high as a mortgage on your investment mortgage. So there's definitely something we can look into, and of course the combination can also be done. This is okay, I want to have the maximum investment mortgage and then don't want to use any of my personal savings, but I'll use the increase of my mortgage to cover the total input of savings. That is a possibility. Of course, all these numbers have a certain effect on each other. So if you have a higher mortgage payments on your residential house, that can have an effect on your options for the buy-to-let mortgage. But these are obviously balances and scenarios that we'll check and see what the best option for you is out there. Very good train of thought, and for sure something that we'll consider in our calculations.
And in addition to this, can you one more time clarify if additional income for rent is taxed?
Okay, no. Yes, I can, but no, it's not. So rental income, when you rent out your entire house, rental income is not taxed as income tax.
Another question, with the new taxes from 2024, will it still profitable to have a rental property?
A fair question. It really depends on your personal situation. What kind of savings you have to invest? What is the profit that you're looking out for? What's the yield that you're looking out for? And this is exactly something that we'll check in the financial analysis to see, well, hey, if this is your plan, let's take a first step back. When you schedule a call with us, it will always be an introductory call, where we'll check what is your situation, and then we'll decide, discuss, well, hey, what are your plans? What is the savings that you have available? Does it make sense for you to move forward with this? If there's options that we say, okay, sure, there could be options to move forward with this, then we'll start the financial analysis and see, well, hey, this is what it will be like, and then you can decide, okay, is this what I'm looking out and what I'm looking for when it comes to profit, and what kind of proxies do I have to look out for then? But we'll also always start with the first check, eligibility check. It can still be very profitable to invest in real estate. It really depends on what situation is, where you want to buy, and what your goal is, and what your options, what your financial situation is right now, for instance, in regards to your savings available.
Mm-hmm. And one more question to you, Robin, about tax return on interest rates. How does it work for keep to let? So basically, do you lose it? And also some people are asking how it works for the buy to let.
Yeah. First of all, what I want to get clear, buy to let and keep to let, there are different processes to get to the same thing. So buy to let is something that you're buying a house from the market and renting it out right away. Keep to let is when you already have the house and you then want to rent it out. It all boils down to investment mortgage, same product for the two different processes. But that being out of the way, the tax benefit over the interest that you pay on your mortgage only applies on a residential mortgage. So if you live in the house, you use it as your personal residency, you are registered there. Then if you have a mortgage on the house, the interest is, you have tax benefit over the interest that you pay. So automatically, when you don't live in the property and it's not your personal residency, you don't have this tax benefit. So you don't have tax benefit over the interest that you pay over your investment mortgage. But then again, you do have a profit there. So and this is all considered in the calculations. Yeah.
So this is very maybe a personalized question, but it's for Expat Letting team. Maybe you can help. If a point system changes next year, will I be impacted? I already have a 35 square meter apartment rented out. Will it suddenly have a rental price restrictions?
I think, as I mentioned earlier, it's only for the for new contracts as of next year. So for the existing ones, no, it doesn't apply to them. So it just depends. Like if you have an indefinite contract with your tenant, then yeah, it doesn't apply to you. It's only for new contracts.
Mm-hmm. And how many buy-to-lets you can get? Is there any limit?
Very good question, actually. That's no, not necessarily, but it kind of depends how the bank will consider you. It also kind of depends on what bank you go with, but generally it's the range of 3 to 5 properties. Then you'll consider it as a consumer still. That's just looking out and investing in real estate. If you go over that number, then you will not be considered as a consumer anymore, but you'll be considered as a private investor, which sounds the same, but it's slightly different. And then it kind of depends what bank we can go with. So some of the regular banks, let's say, so the Rabobank, ABN AMRO, they have this limit of they say, okay, up to 5 or 3 or 5 maximum properties. But then if you want to continue, so what you could do is you have a mortgage, a buy-to-let mortgage on one property, you start repaying, and then increase that buy-to-let mortgage on one property and then buy a new one, so you can continue building out your portfolio. And at some point, you'll be considered as a kind of a professional real estate investor. Then the banks slightly change it. You have to go to another bank for the new investing options, but definitely something we can guide you around as well. So yeah, that's it. Your mortgage doesn't really change with that.
And for example, can you get a rental mortgage for the rental property abroad? So for example, if you want to buy. Is also I had one of the questions if you want to buy a holiday home.
Yeah. So Dutch banks give out mortgages in the Netherlands within the borders of the Netherlands. So getting an investment mortgage on property in France or Spain, for instance, that doesn't work. There are possibilities to get that done for holiday homes in the Netherlands. There are possibilities there, but abroad it's not an option. For the Dutch banks, at least. Usually, especially in holiday countries, such as south of France and in Portugal, Spain, and Italy as well, there are banks that know that people from abroad want to invest in holiday homes, so there are usually options in the country there. And obviously, we can look into, first, you can check what their requirements are, or we can look into using your equity on the property that you have in the Netherlands and see how we can use that. So you wouldn't necessarily have to get a mortgage abroad, but everything is taken care of here. So the mortgage, we can increase your current mortgage on the house that you have here, but the security for your mortgage cannot be abroad.
Mm-hmm. And a question for the ladies, how much notice does the landlord have to give to the tenant if a landlord wants to live there, or there are any problems with tenants?
So, oh, sorry, Lilet, do you want to go through that one?
I was going to say you can answer it if you like.
Oh, okay. No, that's okay. So, well, it all depends on the kind of contract that you have with the tenant. So if you have, for example, model B, you just have to let the tenant know that the contract you went with the maximum 2 years at 24 months. So you just have to let the tenant know about a month before, 2 months before that he has to leave the property, right? So if you have a model A, that's a bit more complicated because the tenant protection, the laws that protect the tenants in this country are very, very strong, and the laws that protect the landlord are not strong at all. So basically, after the Model A becomes an indefinite contract, that the tenant can end the contract with 1 month notice, but he can stay as long as he wants in the property. It is quite difficult. The landlord can give a notice to the tenant, but the tenant has the right to say no, actually, and stay in the property. So be friendly with your tenant. So that's why it's very important to have someone that can screen the tenant to make sure that you have the best person to your property, or the best family to your property, because then when the time comes that you need that to happen, if you have a Model A, then everything should be smooth, and especially if you notice them with quite a big period of time that they have. As you probably know as yourself, renting a property in the Netherlands is not an easy path. So they also need the time to rent another property. So if you have a good relationship with your tenant, then if you give them enough time to find another rental property, it should be okay. But be aware that if you have a Model A, the contract does protect the tenant and not the landlord. So but that's something we can go more deeply into it if it's necessary. And if you have, of course, a Model C, they're going to have an end of the contract date in the contract. So they will have to leave the property. Of course, you both have to let yourselves know, tenant and landlord, when that's going to with 1 month notice. It's in the contract. It goes for both parties, but they do have an end of the contract. But one thing, if you don't say anything about, for example, Model B, it becomes automatically after the 24 months. If the landlord doesn't say anything, that the tenant has to leave the property, or if the tenant says that doesn't leave the property, for example, it will become automatically a Model A. So that's something that it has to be discussed between the two of you. And of course, if you have us as your agent and we are doing the maintenance of the property, we're going to make sure that everything is correct and all the dates are in our system, so we can remind everyone, and we can then you don't have any problems in the future.
I just want to add as well that it's not, you can't just decide to move back to your property because you feel like it. It's, as Diovana said, it's very difficult. It's possible, but it's like a long process. You'll have to go to court to get rid of your tenant, but it has to be a valid excuse, not just because you want to return back to your property if you choose a Model A contract.
I did have a funny story about that. Maybe I hope it's okay to share. One time I was helping an investor to buy an apartment in Eindhoven, and that was before the residential laws to get the permit and everything. So what happened was that the advertisement on Funda, it says that the apartment was for sale with a tenant. So I don't know what was the problem with the landlord and with the owner of the property, also a landlord at the time, but the tenant did refuse to leave the property, and so the owner, the landlord, needed to sell. He sold, and an advertisement came that you are buying a property as a rental property with a tenant who does have a contract, a rental contract. So of course, my clients did not want to buy that property. We did not buy that property, but just so you know how strong the laws are for the tenants, just for a little example, so what can happen. So that's why it's very important to have everything settled in a good contract and a good relationship.
Can I ask maybe a small question there, Diovana? So would it be an option to include an eviction clause that you say, okay, sure, if I want to sell the house later on, I'll give you 6 months or something, or is that not an option?
Yeah, it's not really allowed. I've seen in the contracts before, and because the tenants were internationals, did not really understand much about it. The clause was there, and they were kind of a little bit petrified and already looking for something, you know, or buying even. But by law, it's actually not allowed to it. So if the tenant knows their rights, they will fight back and they will say, no, I'm sorry, I'm staying.
Yeah, sometimes some real estate agents will add it to the clause, but it's only Model C that you can add clauses to. This is actually, Model C is a clause contract, With
Yes.
A and B, you can't add these clauses. Legally, it is added sometimes in the contract, but if it ends up going to court, the tenant,
Yeah.
as Diovana said, is well protected, and it's not going to be obviously accepted.
Makes sense. Very good. Thanks for indulging me in my question. Eglin, go ahead.
Yeah, so also, are there any plans to stop with temporary contracts, Model B in the Netherlands? Is it?
No, actually, it's the other way around. The Model C is becoming more and more popular as a contract, just because people want to start with this contract first. With the Model B, so with the Model A, landlords tend to go for this because it's a guaranteed 1 year rent, because the minimum is 12 months. But with the security with the Model B, if you don't like your tenant, obviously it has a maximum of 24 months. The cons of this is obviously the tenant can terminate this contract anytime within the 24 months period. But people are going for this option, as you've said. People are going for this because obviously it gives them a choice to terminate the contract after the 24 months. But if they do like their tenant, and it's a good way to sort of form a relationship with your tenant, and if you end up liking them, then it automatically, it's like to suss out your tenant first, to give them, to give a feel for them for 2 years before giving them.
And just to add to the question, to the answer as well, as I said, I guess at the beginning of the presentation, when I was talking about contracts, Model B is actually becoming much more appealing to landlords than the Model A. I said before, in Eindhoven, we used to use only Model A, and people would be very skeptical about the Model B. But right now, it's becoming the first choice, because then the landlord has more freedom to end the contract, to get rid of the tenant, to sell the property, and then think afterwards. There is a risk, of course, that the tenant can leave, but in my experience, that doesn't happen that often. People have to live somewhere. Rental market in this country, it is a crazy place to be if you have to find a property. So they will only leave most likely if they actually buy something, which again, we come back to the crazy market that is not that easy to buy a property as well. So yeah, most likely you hold on to tenant for a while.
And I think the key is to keep how to keep your tenant is to have a good property in good condition. And as Diovana keeps stipulating, is that you have to form a good relationship with your tenants so they will stay. And most internationals, they will, when they do end up wanting to buy in the Netherlands, it's like a couple of years process between moving into city, figuring out, where they want to live. And once they do, it's 2 years before they decide to move.
And if you don't want to build any relationship with your tenants, you can always have us. We will build the relationship for you. Right?
So we have a last few questions, I think. Robin, can you convert a buy-to-let mortgage into a residential mortgage? And are there any taxes or refinancing costs involved?
No taxes. The house still stays yours, and yes, you can. So when you're exactly in the situation just discussed, so if you're renting out your house, important that the tenant knows that you're moving back in and that the contract has ended. Then you can change it back into a residential mortgage, no problem. There are not necessarily taxes involved. There could be refinancing costs, but that's more along the lines of an appraiser has to visit the property to determine the value for the new mortgage application. So every refinancing will be considered as a new mortgage application, and you need to do a couple of things. So there's your financial advisor, the appraisal. You probably would have to go by the notary to get everything sorted, but that's about it. So everything combined, maybe 5,000 euros, but not a lot more when it comes to the refinancing cost. So that's it, really. But, by the way, it kind of depends on when you do this. So and how long you fix the interest rate on your mortgage for. So if you fix the interest rate for 10 years with your investment mortgage, And then after year 6, then you say, okay, now I want to live in it myself again. Then you have to break the contract with the investment mortgage bank. And then that could mean that you have to pay a penalty, but it's something we will look into at that time as well, what it really means for you and how to deal with that. Yeah.
And one more last question for the Expat Letting team. It is possible to rent a house with the permission from municipality under the condition that you cannot sell the house? Or
to be honest, I never saw the municipality putting any condition for you regarding a mortgage or selling a property. So or they give you the permission or they don't give you the permission, period. There's no, they don't want to know about the financial or that your financial background or your mortgage, or if you have to sell it or not. They're not going to really bother about this. It's about really having the permit to rent it or not having the permit whatsoever.
Yeah, the municipalities are also not necessarily people to negotiate with.
Yes.
It's very, very clear. They just have a certain list with tick boxes that you do or do not comply to. If I kind of make an assumption that you might think, well, maybe I want to buy in Amsterdam, do want to rent out, but I won't sell it. It's not a negotiation type of institution.
Yeah.
And Robin, so if someone has a permission from a landlord to sublet the entire property, how does that impact income from the rental?
That really depends on how you deal with that with the landlord. And how you then split the income. So you pay rental income rent to the landlord, and if then the landlord allows you to rent out, sublet your apartment, yeah, then that income is yours, and that's pretty much about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Just to add to that, that's a very rare thing, though, especially because if you're subletting the property of someone else, most likely it won't be from your own family hold, so they will need an extra permit for share the property anyway. So just for you to understand.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just for you to understand a little bit more how deeply can go about the subletting. So that's a bit difficult way.
And I was about to add,
with the guys of Expat Letting Network, so know what you're getting yourself into for sure.
and
Yes.
I was about to add also that if you're subletting it, then you have to think about the contracts, and generally, like the property with the contract, the tenant is protected, but when you're subletting it, the landlord is giving you the responsibility, and there are certain risks, because if there's a damage to the property and you're subletting it, you are responsible for it as well.
And please look at the first contract you signed with the landlord, because all the contracts will come with a clause that you are not allowed subletting as well. So unless they take out that clause completely, or they make a new contract and they allow you to do that, you're actually not allowed to sublet. And if you do, you can pay fines about it.
Yeah, and also because if you are subletting it to a couple, then that goes over the housing sharing permit. And that could be an issue. There's a lot of issues in that.
And for example, how long does it take for a court to make a ruling if you want to get rid of a tenant in a model or a contract?
Well, there are cases and cases. It depends what the case is. Depends how long the tenant's there. What are what are they arguing about it? What are you arguing about it? What the whole rental process was for both of you. And there is also the normal time for the court, right? So it depends where the city is. If you go to a small city, I imagine that will be a little bit faster than if you live in Amsterdam, for example, where they're completely busy with cases from all over the Netherlands. So that can take up more time. And I know for sure if there are kids involved, that can be something that it takes a little bit more time, because children, the whole process have to protect the children, of course. So so it really depends on what the process, the whole rental process was since the beginning, and what the accusations are from both parties as well.
And as I mentioned, it only holds in court if it's an extreme case. Like it has
to be very
File-
extreme.
yeah, so you have to file like a police report if it's like, you know, the neighbors are unhappy or certain, yeah, it has to be an extreme case before you can even go to court.
Yeah. There'll be a lot of sitting down to try to solve that before it comes to that.
So that's why
extreme,
it's key to have
history.
a good relationship with your tenant.
I
As
think
there's
the
any
biggest thing
change.
is know what you're doing and be well prepared, basically, right?
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
And I think if you give your tenant plenty of time, like you know, 6 months warning or beforehand, then, and if you have a good relationship, you know, these are cases where it's outside of the contract and it's all about the relationship.
For sure.
Last but not least, hi, is it allowed to buy a second property in Randstad for buy to let if there is a 4-year cap?
You can, and Randstad is considered quite a large area in the end, so it does encompass as far down as Rotterdam, Den Haag, Leiden. It includes Utrecht and Amsterdam and Haarlem as well. So all of these cities, all the cities that I just mentioned, all have this Purchase Protection Act. But there are also quite a few municipalities in that area that don't have this yet, or might have lower standards there, lower requirements. There are definitely possibilities. What you could do also is just pinpoint a place within where you think, well, this is something I might think is interesting, and then check how long the traveling time. So what kind of commute would somebody have to go to one of the larger cities, and then see, because not all everywhere there's this Purchase Protection Act, mainly in the larger cities and municipalities. So there are definitely possibilities, no problem at all. Just be mindful of where you're buying and what the acts are there. But yeah, no problem to do that and rent it out, and yeah, that's definitely a possibility.
And all the municipalities do have that information on their own websites anyway. So like if you pinpoint, like you said, and you don't know much about it, it's easy to go to the website of the municipality. We will have all the laws over there. It's quite easy to find, actually.
And the last question, maybe Lilet or Diovana can just quickly look in Q&A, and this is more related to the damages. So I left one open from Tam. Maybe you can.
What was the question?
Is it not always transparent to determine if landlord or tenant have to pay for certain damage? For example, if a water tap is old and damaged, sometimes after tenant moved in, cause leakage, moist, and then
yeah, generally falls if it's we always put like as a guide that if it's like 50 euros less that it costs to repair a damage, then it falls under the tenant. But anything over like 100, then it falls under the landlord. But that's why you have insurance. Like there's different types of insurance that you take out when renting out your property, and it's always a good idea, especially if you're renting out your property furnished as well. So there are different types of insurance available to protect your property or to protect you in situations like this. Obviously with that specifically, because it's a leaking tap, and you know it should have been, I guess, replaced by the landlord at the beginning. So like what we mentioned, have your property in good condition before you rent it out, then you will avoid all these issues. So when we do the intake, when we come into your property, we will go through certain things and make sure that you know you have them repaired or they are in good order, so that you don't come across these issues in the long run.
And since you're talking about insurance, there's also insurance that we can add to the contract that the tenant can take themselves. So, for example, if you have a rental property that is furnished, they can take the insurance for the movables of the property, for example. So they are protected if something happens, right? So they can take liability insurance as well. So those little things come in a lot of contracts as well. So the tenant also has their insurance to be able to fix stuff, to protect your property as well.
Yeah, so that's one thing you can add instead of the clause.
Thanks. Thanks again, Lilet and Diovana, for a very clear explanation of everything. Eglet, thank you for helping us with Q&A. And there he is, Karim. Thank you so much for hosting this wonderful option that we got. And also want to take the time for everybody that's still here that followed the Q&A. There might be more questions. I even see more questions coming in right now. We're at our time right now. What I suggest you do is you can schedule a call with us using one of these Q&R codes, or just go to our website and schedule a call with any, and then we'll discuss any questions you might have at that time. We'll always start with the introductory call just to kind of get to know each other a bit better and understand your situation, and then we'll take it from there. But for now, thanks everybody for joining and all the experts from Expat Letting Network for joining here as well. And
thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, enjoy the rest of your day. I hope you had a wonderful lunch, and see you next time then.
See you next
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.